Welcome to Modelling Fundamentals Part 15. In this session we're going to run through a couple of different types of stair for you in Power ProStructures. The stairs can be found under the ProSteel tasks E4, and if you pull the flyout down you'll find there'll be three different types of stairs under here. The original one that's been around for a long time is number 1. Number 2 was created by for another firm and was actually placed into the build for people to use this if they want to use it. To be honest with you, I don't even train people on that one. And the final one, Stair 3, this will be the new one that will replace number 1. It's still in sort of development, so they've got a little way to go yet, but it's included all the functionality of number 1 with a lot of enhancements. But I train number 1 and I use number 1 at the moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place it out away from my structure, and I can choose to go like the start point and the direction I want to go up in my stairs depending on kind of where I want to go. So I'm just going to put a set of stairs across here from bottom to top heading left, and it should place a set of stairs for me based on the last parameters used. So I'm just going to tidy this up here a little bit. You can see the handrails and stuff are on, so I just want to turn these handrails off. Come to the handrail and I'll turn this guy off, and the left and right off. Just makes it easier and quicker for everything to update while it's processing all the stairs. If I go to the work frame option here, you can turn on the automatic views if you wish. I tend not to. And if I need to get back into the command, here's your system, that's your intelligence here, so double click on the yellow. Alright, dimensionally, before we kick off with dimensions, show the illustration. It'll make it heaps easier for us to see what it is we're working on. Within here I can set up the boundaries of the object, so this wide, this long, this high, and just set up flesh out the basis of it. But before I even go to that, I kick off here. So do you want a bottom landing, or do you want to take it straight to a slab on the ground? They're really our two options, whether we go from the ground up to a support member or from a support member to a support member, because this is really how we run in Australia. So I'm just going to make a couple of changes here. I like to crop the bottom off, or the front edge off my stair, so I'll just knock that back, and you'll see that the stair, it's a little bit hard to make out, but the stair will update. Minus 10 means it gives me room to put a 10mm base plate on. Check your grading. I run 32. A lot of people run 25, so just watch that for that one. And my upper landing, always make it longer than it needs to be, and we'll cut it back later. If I want a 1 meter landing, I might make it 1200 like I have here, and I'm gonna crop it back later, as you'll see later in the video. At this point, here's my basis now, so my basis is good. Now I want to muck around with measuring my distance from RLs and so forth. So let's just check this. I think it was 3 meters from memory to top of steel. Yeah, 3032. So it's 32mm grading. So that's 3 meters. So in my height, number 3 here, I'm going to make the height 3 meters. Okay, and the key to this is let the rises and goings, adjust the rises and goings. Don't and sort of set in your first height and let everything else then drive that. Don't try and adjust it with the step count. I see a lot of people trying to adjust it with the step count. That doesn't work. I set my rises and goings, and it will try and normalize the structure for you. You might have to juggle the figures around a little bit for it to work, but it will work. But just don't muck around with the step count. Let it do the step count for you. I've seen a few people have trouble with that. So if I change my going, just an arbitrary figure just to show you for this training session. So let's just put in an arbitrary figure here of the goings. Let's go 270. You'll see that number 2 should update. You watch this, bang. So as it's normalized the structure and updated the structure, my adjustment of number 6, the going, will change you know, the step count if it needs to, but the length and so forth. So this is how I drive my structure. Okay, is with these couple here. I sort of set my height first, make sure my rises are right, and then go from there. So now that we've got the dimensions right, let's just cruise on down the list. So don't forget, in the basis, check your web grading, the side offset of your grading on the platform, which is 65 there. Don't forget to set your platform longer than you actually want. So, you know, I got 1200 there. With platforms, moving on, I can put more than one platform. So let's go to 2 platforms here, and then I can put in the length, width, height of my additional sets of stairs. So 1500 is a bit smaller, but we'll fix that. 3 meters lower landing length. Let's set this to 1500 or something like that. Upper landing length, I'll get to that in a sec. So, and it's going to update as I'm making these changes here. So it looks a little bit funky. What if I make that? That's 3240. Okay, so I'll make this guy here the same. And from here, what we'll do is we'll spin the platform around 180 degrees. That's number 5 in my options. I'll get to that in a minute. So we're going to make this guy 180 degrees. That'll allow it to spin around on itself. I probably haven't got a landing grading set, so that's going to put the structure in for me. Number 6 is the distance in between sort of the runs as such. And you get the idea here is, once this updates, you get the idea here where it you can kind of get the structure all fleshed out. If I just spin this around a little bit, I'll move this out off the structure, and then I'll spin this around. So see, I grab it and I move it by the yellow box. That's how we move all our objects. You don't need to select them one at a time. So let's just spin that around. So you get the idea. You can go up and around and around, and I can just keep going up and around by adding platforms within here. So give it an upper landing, but you get the idea. Okay. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'll reset my number of platforms back to 0, so 0 additional platforms, and we'll keep working our way through. But just a couple of things to bear in mind is, do you want it to go from support member to support member? So from the bottom here, do I want a landing on the bottom to the top, supported to supported? And so that's controlled by this guy here. Alright, whether I want a lower landing or not, or whether I want it to go straight to a concrete slab. Platforms, right, our shapes. Our shapes, nominally here in Australia, we use standard object types, shape class PFC, and it's normally 200 PFC, but we can make it at a flat and all sorts of things. Bolting, I can bolt the stringer, I can bolt the handrail and the step treads, and different bolts required for each type. The steps are interesting. I can have a standard stair, which is like a block type object. I can build one out of shapes, or I could have a true block. So our standard shape object doesn't detail very well, if anybody's used these before. I personally, I'm not a fan of them, but they're good for drilling these holes in the side. That's essentially what they're used for, is to prep the holes in the stringer. That said, they don't detail well at all. And just you set the settings as per the standard web forward stuff, and off you go. The block step treads are the ones that I like to use personally. Bentley have given us a few samples in here that we can choose from, and if you pick one of those, it'll update based on the blocks that Bentley has given us. I'll just pick a couple of these just so you get an idea of what comes in. Now these are effectively a drawing with the fascia or the face of the step tread at 000, and they stretch between the stringers. So you could make anything one of these funky step treads if you just invest a little bit of time. So here's the location where the standard ones, so Australia, user blocks, stair steps, and if you added your own, you could get them to work. So I'll see if I can find you one of mine, just to give you a bit of an idea of what we can do here. So I've got my own little directory here for my stuff, so I'm just going to dive into this. And let's go for the type 6, and I'm just going to pick a standard one, just pick any one, that'll get my folder. And in here, now I have a selection of all the block types I'd like to use. So let's go a 3, 2, 5, this one here will do. So pick him, and now that will update itself. Okay, now I've got little nosings and everything on mine, and if you tick on groups, the step tread here, it will actually run through and make each one a little group in its own right as well. But you can see I've got all the little nosings and everything. They present really nicely, and that was just a drawing that I call in. So you can see I had a whole heap of different types, but it does a really nice presentation work. The handrail, I tend not to tick it on, but let me show you what happens here. If we tick on handrail, it will give us the basis of a handrail built on the template that I've provided. So I've got a sort of a handrail WebForge type P here. Makes a little bit of a mess of it, which is why I don't really use them. I use a different method. But if we go into here, we can choose our templates, and if we go into here, it'll take us into our ProStructures handrail function, which means we could actually create one on the fly if we wanted to, or build in additional templates as required. So I've only just got one there just to get us a result. Close out of that, that'll take us back to our stairs. Alright, and that's updating any changes that we had made. So I can choose a template, or I can go directly into the handrail functionality. So I only have one on, and then I copy it over to the other side after I've made the adjustments to it. But really, when I'm putting my stairs in, I don't put handrails on at all. I put them on later. Okay, so this stair that you're looking at here, this is how I do mine. Alright, so I'm going to move this framework, and I'm going to move it from the top of steel over to the adjacent steelwork. So I'm going to go nearest to here. I'm just going to put it at an arbitrary position, top of steel to top of steel. You can see it's moved in here, and using some of my AccuDraw sort of features now, I'm going to move this around. So let's look in the plan view, and I want to move this whole stair over so it's a little bit closer. So I'm going to move it from this edge. I'm going to go tentative snap here, which is now my origin, O for origin, and I'm going to move it back, lock it, and I'll move it back 200 millimeters. Okay, and all of that was done with the yellow box, the yellow framework. Okay, beautiful. So it's 200 mil steel to steel now. I'm going to go object view centered. Next thing we want to do is we want to move it in. Remember, we made this top landing a little bit too long here. So the working point, so I'm going to move this by the yellow box again. The working point for all stairs is this top point of the grading right here. So I'm going to move that. I want it 1 meter off grid. So I'm going to lock the plane. I'm going to pick something on this grid here. So sometimes the ECS axis here is a good one to grab. Tentative snap. That is my origin, so don't move to there yet. That's just my origin. Now I'm going to lock it back to the right 1 meter. So for 1 meter from the grid is going to be that working point. So you can see we're incorporating a lot of the AccuDraw functions here, and we are using our origin point as well. It's so valuable to our work. So that is now 1 meter off grid. And the last thing we've got to do is we've got to shorten this up and connect this up. So we'll do this in the aeroplane mode. We'll kick off by tidying this bit of grading up that's overlapping. So I'm going to pull it back from the center node so it pulls back nice and square, and then we're going to drag it back. We're going to set a tentative snap to here that becomes my origin, O for origin, and then pull it back 10 millimeters. Okay, so there's a 10 millimeter gap between all the grading. Next thing, we'll muck around with this connection. And you could do your base plates as well using the base plate command if you wanted to, with an offset. Nice and simple. Okay, I won't worry about that in this session though. Okay, so let's get a shear plate connection in here. Supported to supporting. That's currently set to the last thing we connected up, which was 3 bolts. So let's go to distance and set that back to distribution, back to 2. Okay, and you'll see that it'll live update. There we go. And nice and neat, you'll see it's coped it in there, and don't forget to check what side is this cleat on. Can we get this connection together, which is really important for automatic connections. Alright, let's have a look at this other side. Now, there's a little bit of a tip to this, so let me just get my view sorted out here for you. If we have a look at the element coordinate system, ECS, you can see here the blue line points up on that PFC. Alright, this one here, look, it points down, which means the top of steel for that member is actually on the underside. It is a bit of an issue with the actual way it was coded, because this function is very, very old, which means we've got to be really careful when we put this connection in, supported to supporting. Have another go at that. Supported to supporting. The top of steel is actually the underside, which means this cleat here is actually going to be too high. We don't know whether you can kind of make that out. It's a little bit too high there. So I'm going to have to come, and if you set this to the lower edge, it means that the cleat is going to come down. Alright, which means technically it's gone from top of steel to, that'll be 70 mil there. Alright, I know this is a little bit weird, but this is a workaround for what we've got to do with the stairs. Okay, one last thing though, I don't want a non-standard connection being the last one I use. So come back to here, go to right click, change connection. The settings for a standard connection has now come into my shear plate connection, which means the next time I go to use it, it's going to have standard settings within it. So a little user tip there to watch out for. Okay, always set it back to standard if you do something non-standard. Alright, let's have a look at this standard stair. This is the new generation stair. Okay, but the reason why I don't quite use it yet, they haven't quite finished it. There's a couple of little tweaks they're going to do to it yet. At Select Series 8 point. I think by the next version of ProSteel they'll probably have this all tidied up. But it has a lot more functionality, it's a lot easier to use, it incorporates a ton of the stuff that the other one is a little bit gets a little bit hard for the other one to do, and most importantly the ECS is correct. So let's have just a quick look at this, because in coming versions this will actually be the new benchmark that I'm going to be using. So we kick off with general parameters of it. Okay, and I'll just give you a brief on this. So stair width, the nosing offset, insert the stair up the top, and so forth. All of this sort of stuff is pretty standard, and the picture is fantastic for us to kind of help us out. We can have a work frame, we can set the clipping distances on the work frame. Again, I do that stuff later manually. And any changes, this is the update button for. Okay, so it doesn't automatically update as I change stuff. Alright, so I'll get a different picture, but I've got to hit the exclamation mark. So you can see that with a bottom cut, I can have all these different bottom cuts. There's lots for you to explore here. So that's the bottom cut. I could also have it, so I could also have it with a bottom landing instead. Okay, so we just have type 1 and type 2, so whether we have a dog leg in it or not to have a dog leg in it. Alright, set this back to, I think type B was mine. And then the input values you can see under the cursor here. Alright, so that was the stair bottom. We come up to the stair top. It's exactly the same. So we can have a top cut on it. We have a series of top cuts that we can place on it depending on how we want it to connect up and what it's connecting up to. We could have it with a top landing, which is pretty standard here in Australia. Okay, just watch out for, there's a support member here, that support shape. Just watch out that doesn't creep in automatically. It's not something we would normally have here in Australia. We normally go up to the end is a support member. So, all right. just like the other one, I can have multiple runs in multiple directions and so forth. So hitting by the plus and the minus there will give us additional runs with the current stair. So you can see here that I've just placed 3 landings in. I'll just shimmy this dialog around a little bit for you. And what I'll do is, let's get this so we can see it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the angle. You can change it to 180 degrees, you can spin it round, you can have it at defined angles and bits and pieces that are less than 90 or 180. So in this instance here, we'll spin it around 90 degrees. We could have 180, and you can see that there's an A and a B which define the platform type, like the structure underneath the platform. Additionally, we could have it a user-defined. We could have it user-defined angles as well, which is your LT. So you can see less than and greater than, sort of positive, negative angle, and so forth. Alright, so there's a fair bit of stuff that we can add in here that we can do. In this instance, pressing the exclamation mark, that would update this. Alright. Let's pull that back to 1 landing again. And we'll have a bit of a chat about the step configuration. This is exactly the same as what the older stair functions got. It's more a case there's more options in here now with this new version. So working through the step type here, we've got shape steps, so we could actually nominate a shape type. We've got our standard stairs. They're the like the dumb block thing that I was talking to you about. Probably a little bit smarter in this instance. The true block stairs, like what I showed you in the old version. And our interlinked pan stairs, the beginning of our pan stairs, we've got several different types of pressed pan stairs here. These are brand new. So the ability to press stuff up, a lot of times they get concrete and so forth poured in them, and this is like a formwork, I guess, that make up where the concrete goes. So you can see there's a couple of different options here if you wanted to use those. So as you can see, the new stair function that we've got works pretty well. Everything, it does at least the same amount as what the old one did. You can assign all the individual objects and so forth. Don't forget that you've got to hit the update button to get it to work. And the final thing, the nice thing about it is if we have a look at the ECS axes there, the blue line is up, top of steel is top of steel, and this guy over here, blue line is up also, which means connecting them is a piece of cake. Final thing, editing is this little circle. There's no box, it's that little circle. So if I select, right click, go to the properties of that circle, it is my stair function for editing.